This is 2A Tonight. My name is Mark Halperin, and I'm very glad to have you back here. We took a week off for some rest and relaxation, and I'm very pleased to have you be part of the 2A community. I will say, I've been in the news dodge for decades now, and I think a lot about the business, and I think a lot about what is news, right? Said before, news is what's interesting and what's important. And sometimes it's more interesting than important, and vice versa. I look at what's been covered all day. Like you, I've consumed news all day on my phone, on cable, my text traffic, my email traffic. And I see what people are covering. I'm looking like now at cable. And there's a lot of coverage of crime and President Trump's war with Democratic mayors and governors on crime. It's getting a lot of coverage. We'll talk about that tonight. It's a big deal. I'm not minimizing it as a story. And there's a lot of stories about Jeffrey Epstein, big story. Maxwell, that's a big story too. And then the Fed, and then of course the question whether Donald Trump's alive. These are interesting stories. I'd say in almost every case they're important in one way or another. But I have to tell you, having had our break, beginning with Putin and Trump in Alaska, like to me, that story is bigger than all these things. And there are daily developments in that story. I'm not here to apologize for how this show's going to go. And I'm not here to tell you that that's the only story we should cover. But I've never experienced a summer with so many stories that at the time they were occurring, at the time they were dominating the news, seemed like they'd be big stories forever. And yet, serially, they've been replaced by other stuff. Maybe my memory is bad. I just don't remember a summer like this. I remember summers with one or two really big stories that ran from July through Labor Day. I don't remember this. And I could list them all for you, but you know them all. But I find this crime story super interesting, super important. I get the politics of it. I'll keep saying the same thing. I really just care about whether kids can go to school and feel safe and whether people can walk around their neighborhood. So I'm for that. I'm for whatever does that. But the politics are interesting and the politics are important. They have implications for governance today and in these cities. They have implications for the president's relationship to his constituents. They have implications for the midterms. They have implications for 2028. I'm not denying any of that. But all of the things we're going to talk about that occurred today, they're incremental, but they're treated in the moment like they're the biggest things that ever happened. So I'll run through some headlines about crime, about the president's mortality, a few other stories. We have two great guests, two of our favorite guests here. I hope you agree. They're two of our best guests. Steve Elmendorf, Beverly Hallberg will both be here, and we'll run through some video. The president spoke at length today at his event that was centered around the announcement about the Space Force moving from Colorado to Alabama, but he answered questions on a bunch of stuff. And then, as always, we'll take your questions. So if you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. But I want to be on record as saying that I'm talking at length about crime and this issue of the president's injection of federal personnel into cities. I'm talking about it somewhat under duress. I just think it's all incremental, and these developments are treated by so much of the media like the biggest thing ever. So let's start with that. The president said today in the Oval Office that, quote, "We're going in. The troops will go into Chicago." The mayor of Chicago blamed the president for shootings in Chicago, and he blamed red states for their guns. The governor of Illinois complained about the president's use of National Guard. The governor of Chicago also said red states have a lot of crime. The mayor of D.C., counter to most of her Democratic counterparts, said, forget the deadline coming up where the president has only a few more days to be in control of the D.C. police force. She says, great, let's continue to partner. It's working well. And it turns out she's been meeting with and talking regularly with the president, the attorney general, the White House chief of staff, Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff. Curious to see what our guest thinks about that. A federal judge in California ruled that the president's use of active military and National Guard in Los Angeles was against the law. Now, it's a district court ruling. He stayed his decision. It's going to be appealed. Again, this is what I talk about incremental, but people are treating that like a big deal. And again, it's not nothing. Those are the major developments on that. On the president being alive, I got to play this. Well, I'm going to wait and play it for our guest. But the president, in his Oval Office photo op today, confirmed he is alive and confirmed that he watched the coverage of people saying he was dead or on his last legs. We'll talk about that. This morning, on the morning meeting, Dan Turrentine said this was smart for Democrats to do because it shows they're tough. I'm paraphrasing. He said no serious Democrat has waded into this question. And then it turns out that the governor of Minnesota has waded into it. I hear some of you silently saying, well, is he a serious Democrat? But we'll talk about that. I'm curious, again, to see what our guests think about that. Few things on Epstein. Mr. Massey filed a discharge petition to meaninglessly ask the government for documents they can't get and which the government says show nothing. Another incremental matter. And Cory Booker announced his engagement. We'll look at the photos of that. Who he's engaged to just might surprise you. Again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. Our guests here in a moment, but first a word from our sponsor, Cozy Earth. They've been our sponsor for a while. Raise your hand, your physical hand, not your yellow hand. If you've got, at our recommendation, you bought some Cozy Earth products, raise your hand. Let's see. All right, I see some hands up. That's nice. They're great. I've been telling you that all summer. They are fantastic, whether it's the pants, the shirts, the bedding. It's all fantastic stuff. And I'm here to tell you, I use it. It's not, I'm not here as your paid pitchman. I'm here as your satisfied customer. Cozy Earth products keep you cool. They're comfortable and they look great. And I'm sure eventually the sponsors are going to say, Mark, stop talking about the pants. We sell more than pants. Can't stop talking about the pants. I wear them almost every day because they are comfortable and cool. And I can wear them anywhere. I'm going to go walk in Central Park after the show tonight. I'll wear the pants. If I go to a cocktail party somewhere on Fifth Avenue, I can wear the pants. They are the best pants I've ever owned, and I recommend it to you. Go to CozyEarth.com right now, 40% off using the code MORNING40. No, that's wrong. What's the code for this show, guys? It's not Morning40. You could probably use Morning40. What's the code for this program? I got it wrong. Anyway, go to two-way. Thank you. Go to CozyEarth.com, the number 2-way for 40% off. Their best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. Get the pants. All right. Enough of that. Thank you for being here. Let's bring in our guest. Steve Elmendorf is a Democratic strategist whose career stretches back to the Mondale era. The Mondale era. I don't think earlier than that. You never worked for Humphrey, did you, Steve? No. What was Walter Mondale like, Steve? Yeah, I met him a couple times, and I can confirm everything Steve said. Just a lovely guy, and truly in it for the right reasons. Beverly, your history with Walter Mondale not as long. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Taylor Swift, yeah, Taylor Swift, yeah. So if you listen to the new episode of Next Up, I talk at some length about Taylor and Travis. Did you listen to the entire New Heights podcast or watch it? Okay, I watched the whole thing. You can quiz me on the last 2 minutes if you want me to prove that I watched it. I am a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I also am a huge student of the extraordinary dialogue they had on this show. Steve didn't watch a minute of it, so I'm filling him in. They both play in giant stadiums for lots of fans, but they both also have this physical regimen that they need to do both before and after each performance. And they're remarkably similar. And she talks about baking. I recommend it to you if you got 2 hours to kill. Anyway, yeah, yeah, yeah. She is an athlete, and I can't wait for the album. And I think the odds are at least one of the three of us will be invited to the wedding. And I'd like to make a pact here. If any of the three of us are invited, They take one of the other two of us as their guests. Okay, deal. Steve, you in? You did. Yeah. Yeah. Now there's a subreddit thing about gay Taylor Swift fans being very upset that this suggests she's maybe not gay. That's a big. I'm serious. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. Yeah, it's a big thing on Reddit. In any event, very grateful to you for both being here. Couldn't be more appropriate to have you two of our finest guests, as our first guests back from hiatus. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all being here. We're about to run through some great video if you'd like to be on the conversation. Not as great as sitting next to Taylor Swift in a restaurant for some, but for others, thrill of a lifetime to be able to ask Beverly and Steve questions. So please raise your hand. Here we go. We got to start with the president not being dead. I don't know how closely you two followed this for the last 5 days. I consider it to be a sign of Trump derangement syndrome in overdrive. Dan Turntine this morning said this shows Democrats know how to play rough because this is what they did to Joe Biden. Here's the president in response to his interlocutor, Peter Doocy, saying he is alive. Number one, please.
Something completely different, but about a big viral social media trend over the weekend. How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No.
People didn't see you for a couple days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning about your demise.
Really?
You didn't see that?
You know, I have heard, it's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said, there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your...
All right. Now, is it the case that no one can hear Steve and Beverly but me? Is that the case? It's funny. Anthony, is your thumbs up mean you can hear them? Yeah. All right. How about on YouTube? Folks on YouTube, can you hear? I don't know. I'm getting a lot of texts. I'm told they can't be heard. Interesting problem to solve. We'll check it out. Again, I hope the people on YouTube are not missing out on this. Beverly, I almost can't fathom what to even ask you, but first of all, can you confirm the president seems to be alive? Okay. Okay. What's generating this? Is it, as Dan Turntine suggests, diabolical Gavin Newsom style? If Trump's going to do it, we're going to do it. Or is it, as I believe, it's a manifestation of Trump derangement syndrome, which is we can't beat him on crime, we can't beat him on immigration, we can't beat him on the economy or Medicare, even though we should be winning there, or Medicaid. So we're just going to go nuts and say his hands have spots on them. Which is it?
See Biden for long stretches of time. And if somebody did call out the very concerning thing that, first of all, we haven't seen him. And when we do see him, he does not seem mentally himself. People were chastised for that. So I think when you put the two together, it shows the absurdity of this claim when clearly President Trump has done so many pressers. He's out all the time. He played golf this weekend. I just don't see how this is a good move for the press when they really do need to build credibility back up with the public.
Steve, I can't wait to hear what you think about this. Please.
I think it's ridiculous. I think Trump derangement syndrome is ridiculous, just as Biden derangement syndrome is and was ridiculous. I just think it's a sign of how cable TV and I guess X, not whatever we call it now, are just not, they're not focused on what regular people are focused on. And I think Democrats should focus on two things. They should focus on the affordability crisis, which is not getting better, and they should focus on the healthcare crisis, which is being created by the Trump administration and RFK. And then they should they should be on the offense constantly on those two issues, affordability crisis, healthcare crisis, and they should respond aggressively on crime and immigration.
Okay, so
and not talk about all this other crap.
So how does this happen, Steve? Now you say it's just Dan Turntine said just online. Here's the duly elected governor of Minnesota, number 3, Walter Mondale State.
In the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying, there will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
So, Steve, that's, everyone says, a clear reference to this notion that the president was dead or deeply ill. Again, I understand, and as an amateur, I agree with your analysis of what your party should focus on. What lures someone like the governor of Minnesota into that? Is it
too many people spend too much time online, and too many people spend too much time watching cable TV? They should stop doing both.
Okay. All right.
And they should go out and talk to regular voters. They should look for other channels to talk to them and not get sidelined by a bunch of people of the far left or far right on social media who are driving stories that aren't important.
Yeah. And do you think that the president's physical or mental health, the current president's physical mental health, Steve, is such that we have unanswered questions? Like about the spot, the bruises on his
I think all this discussion about Biden was unfair. Look, every once in a while, Trump misses names. He called the governor of Michigan, Christie Whitmer, the other day.
Yeah.
If Joe Biden had done that, a bunch of people would have lost their mind.
Yeah.
I don't think we ought to lose our minds about that with Trump, nor should we have done it with Biden. I think we should focus.
You think Biden's mental acuity was on par with Trump's?
Yes,
Steve.
I do. But
Really?
again, he's not president anymore. I think this Biden derangement syndrome is ridiculous. Why are we talking about this, Mark? Let's talk about tariffs. Let's talk about people's prices going up. Let's talk about the fact that RFK is going to make your child less safe going to school this fall.
I hear you. Now, for those of you listening on the podcast version of this program, and by the way, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please do. Beverly's response to Steve's position on the relative mental acuity of the current and previous president was done with her eyes and her visage. and go to the YouTube, because she said it all. She didn't need to utter a word. Very well done. All right, let's talk about crime. And let's talk about the mayor of D.C., number 8, Washington Post headline. This is, on one level, very surprising, and on one level, not surprising at all. Mayor Bowser, quote, welcomes federal law enforcement presence indefinitely. Bowser issued an executive order Tuesday requiring local coordination with federal law enforcement, quote, to the maximum extent allowable by law within the district. The order gives no expiration date. Steve, as someone who's not a big fan of Donald Trump's use of executive power and a resident of the District of Columbia, how do you feel about what your mayor just did?
I think that I think Democrats need to talk aggressively about what they are doing to fight crime. I think they ought to talk aggressively about the fact that there's a lot of places in this country that have much bigger crime problems than Washington, D.C. or New York or Chicago, and Donald Trump is not doing anything about them. I think they ought to talk about the fact that we have too many guns in this country and that Donald Trump is not doing anything about that.
Well, he is confiscating guns. He is confiscating guns in D.C.
I think we ought to go on the offensive and talk about crime and what we're going to do about it. I think that D.C. is a special case. It is not like other cities. The federal government has a legitimate role here in many ways, and I think the mayor is just acknowledging that. Okay,
but are you glad that she's accepting an extended role, or you?
I think this is what Donald Trump is doing in D.C. is performative. Yeah. I live in D.C. I spend a lot of time here. I walk the streets. I think what he's doing with the National Guard, if you see them, they are not fighting crime at the moment.
Do you dispute, Beverly? Hold on one sec. Do you dispute that the statistics shared by the mayor in the White House that crime has gone down in D.C. since the president's operation?
Crime has been going down in D.C. for quite a while. Crime's been going down in D.C. It's been going up in a lot of other places like Shreveport, Louisiana, but it has been going down in D.C. It's never down enough. One crime is too many. We need to fight it. But I don't think that what Trump is doing is the reason why crime is going down.
Okay. Beverly, do you think other mayors, even though Steve's right, D.C. is obviously different, but do you think the mayor of Chicago and the governor, rather than saying stay out, should welcome in federal help as a matter of politics and policy?
Well, first, I think when we're talking about the stats, I do think that, yes, crime has gone down from the ultimate high that we had in 2020 when the mantra of Democrats was to defund the police. It's actually the year that I left DC after 20 years because I didn't feel safe living alone as a woman. When you look at the data, you have to look at the full picture. I agree that DC is a different element altogether because there is constitutional authority of the president to be able to have jurisdiction there. What I like so much about what Muriel Bowser is doing is I hope it actually serves as a model to what we see other mayors do. I hope they look to her and say, she's a Democrat, she still is working with the president, crime is going down, this is good. Because what we have right now, whether it's Chicago or Baltimore, we have a question about process, not whether or not we want crime to decrease. And by the way, if you're a victim of crime, you don't care about the process. You just want things to be safe. But from the libertarian strain of me, I do want to be cautious about the executive having power over states that it doesn't have, because I believe in federalism. So there is a process question here, even though I fully agree that crime is out of control. And I agree with the motive of the president, which is to try to get that decreased. But I think it's a really strong signal from Muriel Bowser. And like I said, I'm hoping that other governors, mayors, and Democrat areas actually look to this as the model.
Okay, so one person who doesn't seem to agree with Beverly's view of federalism is the president. Here's the president today saying he's going into Chicago. Number 4, please.
Mr. President, have you decided you're definitely going to send National Guard troops to Chicago?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets, there's no place in the world, including you can go to Afghanistan, you can go to places that you would think of, they don't even come close to this. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now. I would love to have him call. I would love the governor of Illinois. I'd be honored to take his call. All he has to do is say, sir, we need help. It's out of control. And everyone knows it is. He's not kidding anyone. I would love to have, I would say, Governor Moore call, because I watched him over the weekend trying to explain that Baltimore, what they need is housing. No, they don't need housing. They need to get rid of the criminals. These are hardcore criminals. You know, we took many people off the streets of Washington, D.C. They're hardcore. They're not going to be good. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals, and they're tough and mean, and they'll cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next day. They won't even remember that they did it. And we're not going to have those people.
All right. In reaction to the president, 2 people who apparently share Beverly's view of federalism responded. This is the governor and mayor, governor of Illinois, mayor of Chicago. Let's roll them first. Number 5, the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson.
We will never be able to end gun violence in Chicago as long as the president continues to allow tens of thousands of guns to be trafficked into our state and our city. The vast majority of guns do not come from Chicago. They are not made in Cook County. They are not bought in the state of Illinois. These guns come from red states. They are coming from Indiana. They are coming from Mississippi. They are coming from Louisiana. And that is the harsh reality, whether Republicans like it or not. Occupying our city will do nothing to solve this problem.
All right, and here's the governor mentioned by the president, Governor Pritzker, also talking about red states. Number 7, please.
Going to hear people, especially this past weekend, 54 shot, 7 dead.
Yeah.
They're going to say the city's not safe. Would you ask your friends to ride the L after midnight or after, 9 o'clock at night even to come down to the city from O'Hare?
Look, big cities have crime. There's no doubt about it. But let's just pay attention to what President Trump is doing targeting Chicago. He's overlooking red states that have much higher crime rates.
Steve, the district court judge in California, I don't believe his ruling applies to Chicago, to Illinois. So what happens now if the president sends National Guard into Chicago, given the posture of the mayor and the governor?
I have no idea what's going to happen. What I do know is that we have a higher homicide rate in Jackson, Mississippi, in St. Louis, Missouri, in Memphis, Tennessee, than we do in any of those cities. And I haven't heard Donald Trump talk about sending troops to those cities. So I don't understand really what he's doing. I mean, I think he would have a lot more credibility if he took the top 5 cities in America with the highest homicide rates and sent troops there. And then you can talk about Chicago, and then you can talk about Baltimore when you're dealing with the problem in places where it's worse before you get to there.
Okay. Beverly, just so you both know, everybody knows that the House committee just released the first batch of Epstein files they've obtained from the executive branch. So we'll let you know as those unfurl whether there's anything to talk about. Beverly, what's your view about the separation here between the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, and the president's claim that he's going to send the National Guard to Chicago?
I think he will. Again, I have an issue with that from a federalism perspective. I want to see states and localities be able to work within their own area. And so I disagree just from a process standpoint. But I will say this, I think it's very interesting that you now have a narrative of Democrats who want to blame red states. So we've gone from blaming Trump to now it's red states that have caused this. And it reminds me of the basket of deplorables, and we have a pandemic of the unvaccinated. When you blame people from the problems you're responsible for, it's not going to play well. And so I just see Democrats fumbling all over the place, not taking responsibility and accountability, and continue to push the blame elsewhere when people are just saying, we know crime is bad in Chicago. Do what you can to fix that, whether that is putting more money into the police. And by the way, start defunding the police. You wanted to defund the police for so long. Focus on building it up. We haven't had the recruitment that we've needed because police officers were looked at poorly for the past 4 years. So I would like to see a building up and taking accountability in these cities, but yet I don't think that's what we're seeing.
I'd like to fund more police. I'm all for funding more police. I just don't think the National Guard are the people who should be fighting crime. I think there should be a very clear line between the use of military and using local resources and giving the locals more resources. And I do think we have to talk about guns. Wherever they're coming from, we have too many guns in this country. I know some people don't like to hear that, but it is a fact. And we need to do something about it.
Steve, what are the causes of crime in America?
Mark, there's a lot of causes of crime in America.
Yeah.
There's economic causes of crime. There's social causes of crime. There's availability of guns causes of crime. And again, I'm not saying that St. Louis or Mississippi or any of these states are to blame. I'm just saying they have problems too, and I don't understand why we aren't trying to help them as well. If we want to do something about crime in American cities, we should be doing it everywhere, and we shouldn't be doing it with federal troops. We should be doing it with federal resources to help local police forces deal with their local problems.
It's a complicated topic. All right, let's cover a few more things that we're going to bring folks in.
And you want to talk about it, Mark, because you don't want to talk about affordability. And
I'm about to. When you're on, I want to talk about those issues, and I want to talk about Secretary Kennedy. Steve, I'm pretty sure I know your point of view on this. What can be done for the tens of millions of people who share your concerns? What can be done to allay them or to fix what you think is broken, which spans from the policies of the administration and the secretary, but also these mass firings and resignations? What can be done from a practical point of view, politically, policy-wise, to address the concerns you have?
I don't think anything can be done unless you first start with getting rid of RFK. And that requires Republicans in Congress standing up. And you can go example by example of the things that this administration is doing, which are creating a healthcare crisis where one did not exist. The cuts in Medicaid, the cuts in NIH, the zeroing out of money for pediatric cancer. Pediatric cancer. We're going to do zero funds for pediatric cancer. We're going to have AI check, help Medicare Advantage figure out whether or not to pre-approve procedures. Really? You want AI to figure that out rather than a doctor? I mean, there's just example after example of how the bureaucrats around RFK are creating a healthcare culture in this country that is going to lead to worse outcomes for American people and for their kids.
Beverly, how concerned are you about the concerns Steve is expressing?
Well, first of all, that's multi-layered. I want to start with one of the areas he did mention that I happen to agree with him on, which is the cutting of research funding. I think the way DOGE was implemented was not done carefully. And one of the things that has been talked about is how much money goes to universities. A lot of that is to research health issues. So I'm supportive. I think most taxpayers, Americans, do want to fund cancer research as well as a lot of other disabilities that Americans have to make sure that we can find treatments or cures. That being said, we have a medical establishment, a government bureaucracy that told us lies about the COVID vaccine. Instead of saying, here are your options, you need to figure out what's best for you. They said it was 100% effective, take all these boosters, then you won't get COVID. Obviously, that wasn't true. The mandates on masking, etc. I can go on. I didn't take the vaccine because I have an autoimmune disease, and I wasn't allowed to go into buildings in DC for a while, purely because I had a medical condition and couldn't take the vaccine. So there's a lot that went wrong during that whole time. And so I think people are rightly skeptical. Do I agree with everything that RFK does? No, I think there's a balance of looking at vaccines, trusting the ones that have proven research that have been around for decades, but questioning when new things come on the market and say, yeah, we have a right to try, give people this option, but don't mandate it. So I think for many people, it's refreshing to have somebody in there who they feel like is actually going to take a hard look at what's going on and not just go along with bureaucrats doing what they've always done. So I think for many people, he's a breath of fresh air, even though he's a complicated figure.
Huh. Good euphemism. Steve, for people who want hope that the outcomes that you're worried about won't happen, you're saying unless the Democrats can convince congressional Republicans to force Kennedy out, all the things you're worried about are a foregone conclusion? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I think if the Congress, look, the Congress has an appropriations process, which many in the administration seem to be ignoring. But, Senate Republicans have fought hard to maintain the funding at NIH. Hopefully, Senate Republicans will prevail on that along with the Democrats. House Republicans have not fought as hard on that. I think we have to fight, in the Congress to try and get the administration to spend the money that has traditionally been spent on medical research in this country. And I think that the vast majority of Americans think that vaccine policy on measles, on polio, on a whole bunch of diseases has saved lives, has made their children better able to go to school, and people are for that. And there are many Republicans who are for that, and they need to stand up from Mitch McConnell to Bill Cassidy and fight for those outcomes.
All right, let me do a few things, and we're going to go to your questions. So please raise your hand. If you've never raised your hand before, today would be a good day. As I said, Epstein files are starting to be released. Mr. Massey of Kentucky filed his discharge petition today to force the release of more Epstein files. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson announced she's running for Joni Ernst's seat in the Senate today. And it's not the most important engagement of the summer. We've already discussed that. But Cory Booker is engaged to his girlfriend, number 18. Here's some pictures. Steve, you know Cory Booker.
Yeah, it's great.
What chances you'll go to this wedding?
Better than Taylor Swift.
Alexis Lewis is her name. They've been dating for a while. They've been living together, unmarried, and now apparently they're getting married. Beverly, you want to weigh in on this one?
I love, so good for them. I don't really have anything else to say except congrats.
They look
happy.
exceedingly happy. Yeah, and of course,
yeah.
And of course, what the New York Post is obsessed with, and some people on Twitter, is she looks a little bit like his previous girlfriend, Rosaria Dawson. So some people are pointing that out as a type. All right. Lastly, before we go to your questions, again, please raise your hand. We have another sponsor, and the concerns expressed by both our guests, but maybe particularly by Steve on health, may make some of you a little bit tense, maybe even sleepless tonight. Steve, you have trouble sleeping with all this Trump issues going around?
I don't have derangement syndrome, so
you sleep fine. All right. Well, our new sponsor of both this program and the morning meeting, is CB Distillery. CB Distillery's products can make a real difference for you if you're having trouble sleeping, if you're dragging, if you're exhausted. They work to help your body deal with stress, pain after exercise, for some people, even mood and focus. If you're dealing with any of those things, I urge you to give it a try. They're high quality, clean ingredients, no fillers, just premium CBD. Imagine you wake up feeling refreshed after this with aches and pains, a thing of the past. 2 million people, more than 2 million people, trust CB Distillery's products. So if you're ready to try this, better sleep, less stress, feeling good in your own skin, try it today, and you get a discount. The discount code, two-way, 25% off your entire purchase. Go to cbdistillery.com, promo code two-way, 25% off. Try it now. See if it works for you. All right, let's bring folks in. Again, as always, come on in, unmute, tell folks where you are, what's on your mind for our guests. And I was going to call on someone, he just shut his camera off, so let's go elsewhere. My friend Ray. Ray, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. Ray lives in Ohio, so he understands real America. Ray, you have no trouble sleeping. Tell us what's on your mind for Steve and for Beverly.
Comment that I'm interested in their views on, but I think the problem with Democrats talking about crime is they have no credibility because of past programs that the public perceives as being soft on crime. Dems can't win on arguments on guns or crime rates because that doesn't resonate with anybody who's had a gun pointed at their head, as I did when I lived in New York City. But Democrats might make some headway if they harp on effectiveness and fairness. Where are these troops going? Who are they arresting? What's the actual impact? And try to prove that this is nothing more than window dressing. Americans want effectiveness and fairness. And from everything that we can see so far, this plan is neither.
Steve. I agree completely. It's not effective and it's not fair. That's why I'm saying they should be looking at the places with the most crime and going everywhere. And again, I don't think troops are the answer. I think police are the answer, and more police, not troops.
Beverly, we know from the Clinton years, it takes a while to get more cops hired and trained and out on the street. And the president's looking for a faster solution to that. But I'd love for you to respond to what Ray said.
And that's why we saw Muriel Bowser ask for more time from the president, because this has to be a long-term solution. And it's going to take a while to beef up the police and other security that is in Washington, D.C. So I agree that talking about how effective it is, how is it being done, all of that would be great information that should get out to the public. I'm not afraid of that information. I think we should, because I do think that things that are being done in DC are being done fairly effectively. And we've already seen the good numbers of crime going down. So I agree.
Ray, are your candidates for governor in Ohio talking about crime?
No, nobody is. They're talking about the funding for the Cleveland Browns Stadium and whether or not Sherrod Brown's got a shot in 2026.
Yeah. All right, Ray, thank you, man. Good to see you. Rebecca, are you there? I once again called on somebody who's not there. All right, we'll wait to see if there you go. Unmute. Thanks for joining. Unmute. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind for Beverly and for Steve.
Did I unmute?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, I'm calling from Winnie, Texas, a little place outside, about 30 minutes away from Houston.
Yes, ma'am.
And no, I was just wondering about all this crime and everything else. Do you think that's going to play a part in the 2026 as far as House and Senate?
Great question. Beverly, will this be an issue next year?
Absolutely. I think as the border was a main issue in the presidential election, this is going to be a main issue in midterms. Absolutely.
Steve?
I think it'll be one of the issues. I think it's an important issue, but I think affordability is going to be probably the number one issue is, are things more affordable since Donald Trump became president than not? And we'll see. I suspect the answer is going to be no. I also think healthcare is going to be a big issue. And I think crime, and as I said, crime and immigration are issues, and Democrats have to have a message on all four of those issues.
Rebecca, is crime an issue where you live?
No, not really. I mean, it is in Houston. It's really bad. And it's really bad in Austin. But Abbott is working with the mayor in Houston, and they're fixing to be sending people, more cops and some National Guard to Houston.
Yeah. Texans generally don't much like interference from Washington. Would you like to see the president send National Guard into parts of Texas, even if the mayors and the governor don't want them?
Yes, I would. I would.
You would.
Because, yeah, it's bad. And what a lot of people aren't talking about, like with Chicago, everybody says Black Lives Matter, but that's who's getting killed in Chicago. All them young kids and everything else. I mean, it's in them rundown cities that you don't see Pritzker go to.
Yeah.
You don't see him walk through those.
Yeah. Rebecca, thank you. Grateful to you. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. All right. Patrick, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for our guests after you unmute. One more time.
Oh, there.
There you go.
Making its way. Okay. Okay. Well, over the weekend and the past few weeks, I've been speaking to a lot of people about the crime in DC issue. And
Where do you live, Patrick?
in Fredericksburg, it's not too far from DC.
Sure.
And it, at least in my experience, it seems like people have an opinion based on not necessarily their proximity to DC or another city, but based on, I guess, almost what kind of work they do. Because I ride Amtrak and Metro fairly frequently, and I would say in the past few years, there's been a dramatic rise in definitely in crime on those kind of transportation modes. And it seems like people have turned this Amtrak Union Station thing into its own sort of media event where they are using it to attack police doing anything, even though anyone who's ridden on the Amtrak through Union Station would know that there's almost no seating. They took it all away a long time ago. There's nowhere in that way for people to stand or even wait in line to get on a train. And so it seems like it's just the presence of the police that make people angry, even though it's the presence of the police to prevent the crime from occurring, or at least in an ideal situation. And so I was kind of wondering if you guys had any ideas of ways that could correct that, where crime could be prevented by a show of force, possibly, or maybe there's an alternative that isn't involved.
Yeah, great question. Neither of our guests are expert at law enforcement, but I bet they've got thoughts. Beverly.
Yeah, well, I think this is a multi-pronged problem. So you first of all have problems with family formation, and I think just the breakdown in as the family as a whole, it presents a large societal issue. On top of that, we have issues with the laws in Washington, D.C. and other areas where people aren't held accountable for the crimes they commit, so they keep going back out into society, and so these things keep happening. So those, I think, are two main things. The other part of this, as well as what I was saying earlier, it's building up the police department themselves, making sure they have really good training. Someone told me recently that one of the issues that you're having even with the police is that those who have been there for a while get to pick the areas they want to go to, and those who are green, new to the force, they're sent into some of the toughest neighborhoods and then don't know how to interact appropriately. I remember when I first moved to DC in 2000, I knew my neighborhood cop. I knew him by name. We used to have a neighborhood cop feel where they would go around and actually know the people that they were policing, the communities themselves. I think we need to get back to that human interaction that people have so that there can even be a trust of police again.
Steve.
I think police are the answer, not troops. I think training police, we're throwing tremendous amounts of money at ICE. I'd like to take some of that money and use it to hire more police in more cities. I think that would be a better use of our funds than funding these ICE agents wearing masks, taking people off the street. I'd rather see us fund police in big cities and small cities who are going to walk the beat and get to know their neighborhoods and make a difference on crime. I think that would be a great use of funds.
Patrick, thank you. Grateful to you. Alan, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for our guests.
I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, and crime is on my mind. Been watching this over the past week while you're off. I've been talking about I would love to see a Democratic mayor embrace getting their hand on the wheel and embrace the crime situation. And it's nice to see that Mario Bowser is jumping on that train. DC is a unique situation where he does have a certain amount of power to do it. But if you want to roll out these policies in other cities, I would recommend trying to utilize the ATF, the FBI, and other federal agencies And I wouldn't mind him making a deal with someone like Brandon Johnson and Pritzker, trying to get these resources there. But, you know, like giving money and giving resources, but the strings attached are, if you don't do what I'm going to say, we're bringing in the National Guard, and deal with the consequences. But I would just want to.
Alan,
Sorry.
what makes you think? And I'm not asking skeptically. I'm honestly interested in the answer. What makes you think that the White House, the federal government, has a better idea about how to police a city than the local people do?
That the White House, I mean, to see what's going on in Chicago. I mean, I'm in Tallahassee, so I don't live in Chicago, but I've been following it. To see just over the weekend, there were 54 shootings and 7 deaths.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone in the White House with a lot more knowledge of statutes and emergency powers, he might be able to utilize some of those to get the foot in the door, to, you know, declare some sort of emergency, because, you know, 50 shootings and 7 deaths just in a weekend, to me, seems excessive. So again, I don't know the answer, but I know there's smarter people working in the administration who could find something.
And you know the status quo is no good for kids who live in Chicago.
Exactly. And you know, I see protesters protesting in Chicago, and then I see the residents talking on X about, you know, there's one gentleman who was refereeing a game and was on the ground because there was a shooting, and he's like, he's dealing with gunfire, and then there's people in there protesting, and none of them, they're two different demographics. The gentleman was an African American talking about my neighborhood's being shot up, and then you've got, you know, people protesting who have no skin in the game. So I applaud them for being brave, and I would love to see a compromise rather than a fist fight, because safety should be everyone's priority.
Yeah. Steve, I know you don't want to keep talking about crime, but a brief comment, at least on Alan and then Beverly.
You know, I think the problem here is a lot of people are commenting on crime about cities in which they don't live. I've lived in and around Washington, D.C. for 40 years. This city is safer than it has ever been. Yes, there's too much crime. There's too much crime in a lot of other places. There's also too much crime in D.C. But to say that it's like the way Donald Trump describes the city is not the city I live in. It's not the city I travel around. It's not the metro I ride. It's just not true. It is not factual. And the numbers prove that crime has been going down in Washington, D.C.
Steve, I got to say, I'm very sympathetic to a lot of what you're saying, but I don't care what the crime stats in D.C. are. I just know lots of people like Beverly who have either left or will not go out at night, or have been to tell stories about their car, their bike, their apartment being robbed. So you can cite stats, or you can say
we should do something about that with police. It is a police problem. It is a societal problem. There's lots to do about it. It is not a National Guard military problem.
All right, Beverly, I'll ask you to use more than your eyes and your face to respond this time.
Well, we do know that there are reports that the crime statistics are not being recorded accurately. So I think we need to look into the data itself. But even though I did move in 2000 and left due to the crime, I am there about every other week. I have an apartment there. I don't walk the places I used to. I have girlfriends of mine who say, don't wear jewelry when you go out. Don't go down this road. Places that I would normally walk before, things I would normally do that were safe. It's just not the case. And I think even when people look at the crime in Chicago, I think we at least have a unified force that crime is bad right now. And I'm glad that Democrats and Republicans together are saying, it's bad. Now, again, it's a process question. How do we deal with it? But at least we're getting away from police are the problem to, yes, we need to support police. I really would like more Democrats to come out and say the whole defund the police movement was tragic for our country and tragic to the people that put their lives on the line to protect us. I think it was absolutely terrible. And that's part of the reason we find ourselves in this situation today. And I do think somebody who lives in another city can look at Chicago and say, yeah, that many murders, that many shootings, that's a problem. I don't need to live there to know that the mayor, the governor should be saying that it's unacceptable and that they are doing everything they can to fix it versus blaming the president or blaming guns or blaming red states. They need to take accountability and fix it.
Alan, thank you. Grateful to you. Ryan, welcome in. What's on your mind? Tell folks first where you are.
Hi there, Mark, out here in San Jose, California. Thank you for calling on me. I know I dropped off earlier. I think that was
That's
your
all right.
reference.
Yes, sir. Welcome back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question concern is just about the frivolous nature with which we're throwing away the idea that Donald Trump is declining in health. He's the oldest president we have ever had. And it's clear from recent what they actually told us that he does have some health troubles. They may not be imminent, but why we're throwing away the concern altogether just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we're not throwing away altogether, and although they claim to have had full disclosure about this problem with his legs, I still would like the doctor to go to the briefing room and answer questions from medical correspondents. I don't really understand what's going on with his hand. So I'm not dismissing that. I think what we're dismissing is reports that he's dead, or that he doesn't have the mental acuity to do the job. He's been misspeaking for years. I'm not minimizing the need to scrutinize his mental and physical health, but what's happened in the last 5 days is bonkers.
I completely agree with you there. But
yeah.
With all that said, and going back to Steve's comment about, trying to focus on the right topics from a Democratic Party perspective, I mean, I would say, Steve, we need to flood the zone. We cannot leave any topic off. We can't just let it go. I think, from a Democratic perspective, that's what a lot of folks are looking for is just like the Republicans have been doing for quite a long time, and what Donald Trump is especially good at is picking those topics. Mark for ages has been talking about the fact that Democrat or Donald Trump wants to put Democrats in general on the back foot, and he's doing a great job. So what can we do to do the same thing?
Before Stephen and Beverly respond, I'll just say I'm not against politics, and I believe that one of the great untold stories of the last 10 years is Donald Trump's political opponents, not just Democrats, but Republicans who don't like him too, their inability to meet him either symmetrically or asymmetrically in a way to try to limit his ability to get what he wants, because he gets what he wants a lot of the time. On the issue of health, I understand weaponizing it, and I'm agnostic on it. It's not my place to say whether it's a good idea or bad idea. What I think the bigger issue is, if we've got a president that old, there should be medical correspondents in the briefing every day saying what's going on with his hands. You say it's aspirin and handshaking. Why is he taking aspirin every day? They haven't really explained that to my knowledge. And there's no excuse for bruising on his left hand because he's not doing two-handed handshakes. So I want all those questions answered, not to wound Donald Trump politically, but for public accountability, and so the country can have confidence that the president, in fact, is in good enough health to do the job. That's my concern. Beverly.
I completely agree. I don't have a whole lot to add to that other than to say feeling like that your president is up for the job mentally is not just important for the job he does in the states itself, but it also matters with diplomacy with other countries. I think we looked very weak with Biden as president when he clearly was not at the top of his game. And I think having strength just in health alone is important. Hear people talk about maybe there should be an age limit for a president. I think it should be more like you were saying, Mark, we just need to have medical tests fairly clearly defined so we understand what's going on.
Steve.
Mark, you're probably old enough to remember when we had a doctor who was a reporter for the New York Times named Dr. Lawrence Altman, who was sort of the gold standard of coverage of presidential health. And there was a lot of transparency, and there was a lot on all presidents of both parties about their condition. And I think that's what we should have, is real transparency, and it's just real doctors asking questions. Do I think it's the number one issue in our country today? No. I'm more concerned about the health of kids going to school where people aren't vaccinated. I'm more concerned about grandma having, an AI bot decide whether or not she could be covered by Medicare or not. But yes, the president, we need to talk about a lot of different things. I do think we need to focus on some really important things, though.
Ron, what do you think about your governor now and his team up in the president's grill every day? Is that appealing to you?
I mean, I gotta applaud him at least for, trying to take a different approach at, politically going after Donald Trump. With that said, I think in many ways it's a distraction, similar to what Trump does himself. I think, Gavin's got an interesting record here in California. Overall, I would say I support him as governor. With that said, we still have a lot of problems we got to fix in this state.
Yeah. Ryan, thank you. Appreciate you being part of Two-Way. Grateful
Thank
to you. All right. I'll show you one thing from the just released Epstein documents. I'm told it's a little hard to read, but we'll put it up full screen. This is something called the Bureau of Prisons Suicide Risk Assessment. Bureau of Prisons Suicide Risk Assessment. I'm not sure what the date on it is, but it says, again, hard for most of you to read on whatever screen you're on, but what it says is that Epstein, quote, did not appear to be an immediate threat to self. Do we know how far in advance this was of his suicide, being found dead?
It was very close, and he was taken off suicide watch a few days before he died, according to these new documents.
Yeah. Now, you can take it down. I'm not a
this
big
was
fan
9 days. This was 9 days before his death.
I'm not a big fan of the Maxwell interview. I thought it was a sham. Thought the questions were ridiculous, and I thought her answers were ridiculous. I don't know how anyone could take her position on anything seriously, because she denied committing any of the crimes she was convicted of, and for which there's a fair amount of documentation. But she said she didn't think he killed himself. And I know a very good friend of his who says that, and his family says that as well. So, Steve, I know you love the frivolous questions. Do you think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
I do. But I think the answer on all things Epstein is similar to the answer on a lot of other things, which is transparency. I don't understand why they want to have full transparency on RFK senior files, on JFK files, on MLK files. We should just have complete and total transparency on Jeffrey Epstein files.
Yeah. Beverly?
I'm on the fence. I don't know. It's one of those issues where I just personally want to know who the predators are and to catch those predators. That's why I care about. So whether or not he killed himself or not, I'm like, maybe it saves some taxpayer money that he didn't go through all these trials and he was guilty of a lot of what he did. So I don't really have any thoughts on that. I just think we need answers to who was involved with this, and that's what I hope we find.
Okay. Let me ask you both one other question, just off of what we've been talking about. Beverly first. What do you hope Congress gets done between now and the end of the year?
Well, I'm looking forward to rescissions package to hopefully cut some more government spending. So obviously there was the big, beautiful bill initially, and I do disagree with Steve on the Medicaid cuts. What the Medicaid cuts really did was take able-bodied men 30 years old who aren't working, who wanted to take medical funds away from women who are pregnant, seniors, disabled, et cetera. So I like to see a lot of the waste and fraud cut out of Medicaid. And I'm looking for a lot of bloated programs and bureaucracies to be cut. And I'm hoping that more cuts can be done before midterms, because once midterms hit, who knows if Republicans will get to do anything after that.
Yeah, Steve, if things that are in the realm of the possible, what would you like to see Congress do this year?
I would like to see them extend the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act so that more people can afford health insurance, because they're going to need it because of all the cuts to Medicaid.
I think that'll be done as a shutdown deal. How do you like that?
I think there's a high likelihood, and people even like Tommy Tuberville are talking about the need to get it done.
Yeah, because he's got actual constituents. Very grateful to you both, Steve and Beverly. Thank you for coming on. I hope you'll come back regularly. Love having you here. And Steve, we're going to talk more about affordability, I promise. Promise. All right, thank you both. Thank you all for watching. Right now, turn over to Michael Moynihan, Moynihan Report, new episode that you can participate in. Great opportunity to learn more about AI. Do we have a slide for that? I'm waiting for it to come up. Michael's guest tonight. There you go. Douglas Rushkoff, a media theorist, author of Program or Be Programmed. Again, that's live in 1 minute on Two-Way. And I'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time with Sean and Dan. And my new episode of Next Up, available now on YouTube and as a podcast. My guest, Dan Turrentine. We talk all about the Democratic Party's current challenges. And Josh Gerstein of Politico. We run through the legal cases and my reported monologue on the top 10 stories of the summer that are coming big time into the fall. Listen or watch that now, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of Two-Way and for coming back. Have a great evening.